Amara Nwosu ate her dinner at 11:47 at night in the loading alley behind Cha Global Logistics Tower off a blue enamel bowl with one chip on the rim shaped like a comma. She always ate here. Nobody came through the loading alley after 11. Not the guards, not the delivery trucks, not the tower's silver elevators sliding up into the dark like something that had never once had to think about rent. It was the only 20 minutes of her shift that belonged to her. Then a man fell against the dumpster 3 feet from her and did not get up. She did not scream. Screaming did not fix anything. She set the bowl down on the crate beside her and crossed the 6 feet between them and crouched, the way she had learned to crouch over frightened, bleeding things a long time before Seoul. Sir, no answer. Blood, dark and shining, soaked through a coat that had cost more than her rent for a year. Sir, look at me. His eyes opened, sharp, even now. Even bleeding out behind a dumpster at midnight, his eyes did the arithmetic on her face first. Who are you? What do you want? What is the angle? Before anything else moved in them. No hospital, he said. That was not a question I asked you. He almost laughed. It came out as a cough instead, wet and wrong, and she pressed her palm flat against the wound before he could argue with her about that too. She used her headscarf. It was the only clean cloth she had. She wound it twice and knotted it the way her mother had taught her to knot a wrapper that would not slip. And while she worked, she talked. Because frightened things needed a voice more than they needed silence, whether they were dogs or men in coats worth more than her rent. You are going to sit here, she told him, and you are going to eat something. Then we will discuss whether you are dying. In that order. I am not hungry. I did not ask if you were hungry. Eat first. Bleed after. She picked the bowl back up, and without thinking about who he was or what he was worth, or what a stranger with a knife wound behind a Gangnam Tower might mean for a woman with a 6-year contract and a daughter asleep 4 subway stops away, she held out her own spoon. He looked at the bowl, at her, at the bowl again. He ate 4 spoonfuls, no more, his hand shaking around hers on the spoon's handle, and something in his face came loose that had nothing to do with the wound. She would not understand what, not for a long time. She only knew a man who looked like he had never once eaten from another person's plate, ate from hers without asking what was in it, and did not stop watching her while he did. You should go, she said once the bleeding had slowed, before whoever did that comes looking down this alley. He stood, swayed, steadied himself against the wall, and for 1 second, before the mask came back down over his face like a shutter closing, she saw a boy in there. Someone's tired, hungry son a long time ago, in a kitchen much smaller than the tower behind them. Your name, he said, not a question. A demand dressed politely. Amara, he said nothing back. He did not owe her his, and she had not asked for it. She told herself, walking back to her cart and her mop and the 9th floor still waiting to be cleaned, that this was the end of it. A stranger, a bowl, a knotted scarf she would have to explain to Chi-Chi in the morning. She had no way of knowing he would be back in that alley the very next night. Or that 4 days before this one, none of it had started here at all. 4 days earlier, Amara Nwosu had never heard the name Cha Song-ho. 4 days earlier, her whole life ran on a schedule too tight for a bleeding stranger, or a syndicate boss, or a blue enamel bowl becoming the center of anything. The schedule went like this. Wake at 5 before Chi-Chi to iron the one good blouse for the morning and the one good blouse for the night, because she owned exactly two and could not afford a third. Drop Chi-Chi at Mrs. Song's sister's, who watched 3 children for a fair price and asked no questions Amara did not want answered. 10 hours at the dry cleaning counter in Yoksam, folding other people's shirts into other people's futures. Home for 2 hours, if home was the word for a single room with a hot plate and a mattress and a window that looked at a wall. Then the second job, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., cleaning 3 floors of Cha Global Logistics Tower with a cart, a mop, and a badge that said her name wrong, missing the second A. The math was simple and unforgiving. 1,450,000 won a month from the night cleaning, 550,000 for the room, 150,000 wired home every month without fail, rain or fever or empty cupboard, because her sister Ifeoma was in her second year at university in Enugu, and university did not wait for anyone's hard month. What was left fed her and Chi-Chi and nothing else, and most nights what was left was less than what the math promised, because the math never accounted for a daughter's shoes outgrown in 6 weeks, or a landlord's sudden fee for the elevator that had not worked in a year. She ate her own dinner last, always, out of the enamel bowl, because the bowl was the one thing in the room that had never once let her down. She had bought it 4 years and 2 months ago at Namdaemun Market for 3,500 won, standing beside a man named Emeka Nwosu, who had turned it over in his hands and said, "This one." The chip makes it honest. He had died 11 days later, a traffic report that never explained itself, a night shift that ended on a road he had no reason to be driving, and a case file that closed itself somewhere she was never shown. She still ate from the bowl every night, the last 20 minutes of her day, because Emeka used to say a thing to her, back when they were young enough to believe kindness was a strategy instead of a risk. Never let a man go hungry before you find out if he's your enemy. She had never once needed to test it. Not until a bleeding stranger fell against a dumpster, and she fed him from her own spoon without asking his name first. Mrs. Song noticed the missing headscarf the next morning and said nothing, only looked at Amara a beat too long over the mop bucket. The way a woman looks at another woman she suspects has just done something either very foolish or very right, and has decided not to ask which. Amara did not think about the man again that whole long day. She told herself she did not think about him at all. That was, of course, a lie she would only get to keep for one more night. 9 floors above the alley, in an office with glass walls and no photographs, Cha Sung-ho sat with his shirt open and a doctor stitching his side, and did not once, in the hour it took, ask the doctor for anything to dull the pain. He had been shot at twice in 11 years running the Cha line, and stabbed exactly once, tonight, by a man from the Du family who would not live to regret it. And in all that time, no one had ever once handed him a spoon and told him to eat first, bleed after, as if his blood were an inconvenience to be scheduled around rather than a catastrophe to be managed. He kept thinking about her hands, steady, unafraid, certain in a way that had nothing to do with knowing who he was, because she plainly had not known, and everything to do with something else, some old, worn competence that had been built by doing this exact thing, tending an emergency with a calm voice, more times than any woman should have had to. Director Baek Min Jae stood at the door, the way he always stood, like a man who had learned 9 years ago exactly how much space to take up in a room with Cha Song-ho in it. The Du family will claim it wasn't sanctioned. They'll be lying. I know. Do you want me to respond? Sung-ho looked at the ceiling, at the stitches closing under a bright clinical light. At nothing, really, because what he was actually looking at was a memory. His mother's hands, cracked at the knuckle, hanging damp shirts by a window at 2 a.m. Before the money, before the tower, before any of it. And a woman tonight with the same hands doing the same unthanked labor in a different city, a different life, and somehow the exact same hour of the night. Not tonight, he said. Tonight, find out who she was. Min Jae did not ask who. He had worked for Cha Song-ho for 9 years, long enough to know that the director never repeated a request, and long enough to notice, filed away for later, the way a good lieutenant files everything, that this was the first time in 9 years his employer had ever asked him to find a woman for a reason that wasn't leverage. Amara went home that morning the same way she went home every morning, on the first train, with her badge still crooked on her collar and her feet screaming inside her shoes. And she did not know that somewhere in a building she had just finished mopping, a man with her scarf still knotted at his side had already begun looking for her. She would learn his name in 3 more days. She would not learn the rest of it, what his signature had cost her 4 years and 2 months ago, on a road with no explanation for a great deal longer than that. The dry cleaning counter in Yoksam smelled like starch and other people's cologne, and Amara had folded 400 shirts by the time the lunch bell rang. Each one creased along a line she could have drawn blind. It was not a skill anyone had taught her on purpose. It was a skill she had built the way she built everything, by doing a small thing correctly 10,000 times until her hands stopped needing her attention for it, which left her mind free to do the real work of the day, the school fee math, the rent math, the how many days until payday math that never once came out even. "You're doing it again," said Grace, the counter girl beside her, a round-faced woman from Busan with a laugh too big for the small shop. The face. Counting in your head face. I don't have a face. You have exactly one face, and it does exactly one thing. Grace folded a shirt badly on purpose, just to make Amara reach over and fix it, which she did without being asked. The way she fixed everything within reach. "Someday you'll tell me what you're always counting." Someday, Amara agreed, and did not elaborate because the counting was hers. The last private thing she still owned outright, along with the bowl and the 2 blouses and a chip shaped like a comma. 9 floors up in a tower she had never entered by the front door. Cha Song-ho sat through a merger call in Korean and English, and once, briefly, Japanese, discussing shipping lanes and tax structures with the flat, bored precision of a man who had made himself very rich doing something he had stopped finding interesting a decade ago. The staff around the table did not meet his eyes for longer than a sentence required. They bowed at the correct depth and left when dismissed, and one of them, a junior director named Han, laughed at a joke Sung-ho had not made, simply because the room needed someone to laugh, and the room had decided it would not be him. He watched the security monitor more than the deal that afternoon. Ninth floor. Elevator lobby. A woman in gray coveralls pushed a cleaning cart past the frame at 3:14 in the afternoon, the wrong hour, the day shift, not her, and he caught himself disappointed before he had even finished the thought, which unsettled him more than the stitches in his side. "You're staring at cleaning staff," said Min-jae, low, once the room had emptied. "I'm thinking. You've been thinking at that monitor for 6 minutes." Sung-ho did not answer that. Instead, he said, "Anything on the woman from the alley. Working on it." 2 jobs, both legitimate badge records at a dry cleaner in Yeoksum and a night contract with our own cleaning vendor, which is either a very large coincidence or the least surprising thing that has happened to you all year. Min-jae paused, the pause of a man deciding how much truth to spend at once. Her file has a gap in it. 5 years back. I haven't pulled the closed record yet. Do you want me to? Something in Sung, who went very still, the way a lake goes still before weather. He did not know why. He would not know why for another 6 days, and even then, he would wish he had asked Min-jae to pull that file the moment the word gap left his mouth, instead of waving it off the way he did. "Not yet," he said. "Find out where she lives, where her daughter goes. I want a man watching the block, quietly, in case the Du family decides this was a message they need to finish sending." "You think they'd go after a cleaner?" "I think," Sung-ho said, and stopped, because the sentence he had almost said, "I think I already owe her something, and I don't know what yet," was not a sentence a man like him said out loud to anyone, not even Min-jae, not even to himself in a room with no photographs on the wall. His mother had cleaned other people's floors for 9 years before the money came. He had been 11. He remembered a smell, bleach and cold rice, and a pair of hands that shook slightly by evening from 12 hours of wringing a mop, and a woman who never once complained in front of him, only hummed low some hymn from a church she'd stopped attending because the hours no longer allowed it. She had died 3 years after the money finally arrived, too tired by then to enjoy it, and Sung-ho had built an empire on the wreckage of never being able to thank her for a single one of those nights. He had not thought about her in months. He thought about her now because a stranger with steady hands had told him to eat first and bleed after, in a voice that carried the exact cadence of someone who had learned patience the hard way and decided to spend it on him anyway, for no reason he could yet name. Their paths crossed once more that week, and neither of them noticed. Amara pushed her cart past the 9th floor conference room at 11:52 at night, while Sung-ho stood at the window with his back to the glass, arguing quietly on the phone with a board member about optics and territory. And, for 4 seconds, the only thing between them was a wall he owned and she scrubbed, and neither one turned around. It would take an ambush, a knife, and one more visit to that alley to close the distance properly. The ambush came first, a call at 9:40 that evening. Min-jae's voice, tighter than Sung-ho had heard it in years, saying the Do family had moved up their timeline, saying tonight, not next week, tonight, and Sung-ho, straightening his tie in a mirror with no photographs behind it, felt something that was not quite fear and not quite anticipation settle into his chest like a held breath. Whatever waited for him tonight, it was going to bring him back to that alley. He did not know that yet either. But the city did, the way cities sometimes do, holding its breath along with him. Which brings us back to that night, the dumpster, the coat worth more than her rent. The bowl held out without a question attached to it. What the cold open did not show is what happened after she walked away. Sung-ho sat against the tower's loading wall for 11 more minutes once she was gone, his side throbbing under a headscarf that smelled faintly of shea butter and someone else's dinner, and did the thing he almost never did anymore, which was nothing at all. No calls, no orders, just the alley and the sound of a train somewhere far off, and the strange, unfamiliar sensation of having been handled, gently, competently, entirely without deference, by a stranger who had no idea what he was worth, and had not, even once, asked. He left an envelope on the crate before Min Jae's car came for him. 400,000 won, more than fair for a scarf and a spoonful of rice, folded once and weighted under the bowl so it would not blow away. She found it the next night exactly where he'd left it and did not take a single note of it. She left it, Min Jae reported the following evening, with the particular flatness of a man delivering news he found genuinely strange. The envelope, untouched, there's a piece of paper under the bowl instead. He read from a photograph on his phone, her handwriting square and careful. I didn't feed you for money. Keep it for someone who needs stitches worse than a thank you. Sung-ho read it twice. Anyone else, Min Jae said slowly, would have kept it. I know. You're smiling. I am not. You are. It's small, but it's there. I've worked for you 9 years, sir. You don't do this. Sung-ho did not argue the point, because there was no point to argue. Min Jae was right, and they both knew it, and the not arguing was itself the clearest confession Sung-ho had made in a decade. He came back to the alley that night anyway, at 11:40, 7 minutes early, and told himself it was to return the scarf, freshly laundered, folded into a square so precise it looked machine-pressed. She was there at 11:47, exactly on time, bowl in hand, and stopped 3 feet from him, with an expression that was not quite surprise, because some part of her, the part that counted things, the part that had learned 4 years and 2 months ago that the universe rarely finished a story on the first telling, had wondered if he might come back. You're supposed to be recovering, she said. I am recovering. Standing up, mostly. That is not what recovering means. Ring it together, he said, which made no sense to her, an echo of a line he'd said once before to a cashier in a memory that did not belong to this life at all, and he caught himself and did not explain it, because he did not yet understand it himself. He held out the folded scarf. She took it, and their fingers did not touch, because he was careful about that, in a way that told her more about him than 100 sentences could have. A dangerous man, plainly, by the 2 guards now stationed unobtrusively at either end of the alley. And yet a man who handed a scarf back to a stranger without once trying to close the distance she had not offered him. You didn't take the money, he said. I didn't feed you for money. Then why? She thought about it honestly, because he had asked honestly, without the polite performance men usually wrap the question in. My husband used to say, never let a man go hungry before you find out if he's your enemy. You looked hungrier than dangerous. I decided to find out which one you actually were before I decided anything else. And which one am I? I don't know yet. She said it plainly, no flirtation in it. Only a woman doing careful math on a stranger the way she did careful math on everything. Ask me again when I know your name. Cha Sung-ho, he said. She turned the name over once in her mind. The way she turned over coins before letting a cashier see them, and found no particular alarm in it, because the name Cha meant many things in Seoul, and she had no reason yet to know which of them applied to the man standing in front of her with two guards at either end of an alley he apparently owned outright. Amara Nuosu, she said back. Something crossed his face at the surname. Brief, unreadable, gone before she could name it. A flicker like a man hearing a word in a language he'd forgotten he spoke. He did not explain it. He would not have been able to. Not yet. The recognition was not conscious, only a splinter working its way toward the surface of something buried 5 years deep in a file he had never personally read. Thank you for the spoon, he said instead, and left, and Min Jae, watching from the car, made a note in a small notebook he kept for exactly one client. A note that read simply, pull the closed file. Nwosu, 5 years back. He needs to see it before this goes further. He did not deliver that note for 6 more days. By the time he did, it was already too late to stop what had already started growing in the space between a bowl and a bleeding man's hunger. The knock on Amara's door came on a Thursday at 7 in the evening while Chi-Chi did homework at the small table and the hot plate warmed a pot of stew that had to stretch 3 more days. It was not Min Jae standing there. It was a woman from the cleaning vendor's office. Brisk, professional, with a folder and a proposal that made no sense at first hearing. Director Cha's residence requires a private housekeeper, cooking, light household management, 4 evenings a week. He requested you specifically. The woman said it the way she might report weather. 2,800,000 won a month. Amara did not invite her in. She stood in the doorway with Chi-Chi's homework silence behind her and did the math instantly, out of habit, nearly double her current wage, enough to move Iffy's fees from a scramble to a certainty, enough to finally fix the elevator fee without missing a meal to do it, and distrusted the number precisely because it added up too well. Why me? He didn't say. Then the answer is no. The woman blinked, clearly unused to the word, and went away to report it. And 3 days later, it was Min Jae himself who came. In the daylight this time, no guards, hands visibly empty, and waited on the step until Amara agreed to hear him out over the doorway instead of through it. I've worked for him 9 years, Min Jae said. I've never once seen him ask for a specific person by name for anything domestic. He wants to thank you properly. That's the whole reason, as far as I can tell, and I'm usually the one who can tell. Men don't offer women 2,800,000 won a month to say thank you. No, Min Jae agreed. But he's not most men, and you already worked that out the night you bandaged him instead of running. She considered him for a long moment, a tired, patient man in an expensive but unshowy suit, telling her the truth as plainly as he seemed capable of, and set her terms the way she set every term in her life. Out loud, with no room left for renegotiation later. I keep my night cleaning contract until I've decided whether this is real. I don't move in. I'm not on call past 9. And the money comes to me directly, not through anyone else's account, and it ends the day I say it ends. If any of that is a problem, Thank the director for his trouble and tell him to donate the difference somewhere it's needed. Min Jae wrote every word down and did not once tell her that she had just described, without meaning to, the exact terms his employer would have respected most in another man and would now spend the next several weeks slowly, helplessly, learning to respect in her. Her mother called that night from Enugu, the connection thin and warm across the distance, and when Amara told her about the offer, her mother went quiet in the particular way that meant she was praying and thinking at the same time. A rich man asking for you by name, her mother said finally. Be careful, Amarachi. Rich men's kindness has a bill attached, even when they forget to write the number on it. I set the terms, Mama, not him. Good girl. A pause, warm static on the line. Your father used to say the same thing about Emeka, you know. That boy sets his own terms even when he's hungry. That's how I knew he was worth marrying. Amara laughed, the first real laugh in days, and did not tell her mother that the memory of Emeka's terms, never let a man go hungry before you find out if he's your enemy, was the exact reason she had said yes to a bleeding stranger in an alley in the first place, and was now, 4 days later, saying a careful, conditional yes to his household as well. Chi-Chi's opinion, delivered without being asked, was simpler. Does he have a kitchen with real pots? Ours only has 2. He has real pots, I think. Then say yes, Mama. You always make better food when the pots don't fight you. She started the following Tuesday. The apartment, penthouse, was the word Min Jae used, though it looked to Amara more like a museum that had forgotten to acquire any warmth. Had a kitchen with 6 burners and not a single spice jar out of alphabetical order, because a chef came twice a week to restock it and never once cooked in it for pleasure. Sung-ho was rarely home before 9. The staff, when they noticed him lingering in the kitchen doorway on the nights he was, exchanged glances they thought Amara did not see. She saw everything. It was, after all, the entire foundation of the only skill the world had ever paid her fairly for. The first weeks ran on careful distance, a woman cooking, a man working late at a table 20 feet away with papers he did not need papers for, both of them pretending the distance was about efficiency and not about something neither of them had a polite name for yet. Then, on a Thursday in the 4th week, she cooked jollof rice. It was not a decision. It was homesickness with a lid on it, rice and tomato and Scotch bonnet simmering low, and the whole sterile apartment filled with a smell it had never once held in the 11 years Sung-ho had owned it. He came out of his office without meaning to, drawn the way a man is drawn by a sound from childhood he cannot place, and stood in the kitchen doorway watching her stir a pot with the particular, unhurried confidence of someone who had made this exact dish 1,000 times in kitchens that had never once been sterile. What is that? Dinner. Sit. I'm not. Sit, she said again, and he did, at the little steel island he had never once eaten at. And she set a bowl in front of him, not the blue enamel one, a plain white one from his own cupboard, though she noticed, with a small private ache, that he seemed almost disappointed it wasn't the other. He ate slowly, the way a man eats something he is trying not to admit he loves. This is better than anything my chef makes. Your chef alphabetizes his spices. He's afraid of the ones with real names. He is not afraid of paprika. He filed it under B. She nodded at the rack behind him without turning around. Go look. He looked. It was. He almost smiled, the same almost from the alley, 4 weeks and one bowl of rice ago, and for a moment, the distance between them collapsed into something small and warm and entirely ordinary. A man and a woman and a pot of rice, no titles attached to either of them. Later that same week, a call came into the apartment in rapid, formal Korean. A supplier, irritated, assuming the woman who answered the phone was staff too junior to understand him, and complaining, at length and with real venom, about the foreign woman running the director's kitchen now. God knows what standards she keeps. Amara answered him in Korean so clean and unhurried the man on the line went silent for 3 full seconds. "The standards are excellent," she said. "I checked them myself, twice, the way I check everything." "Would you like to discuss the invoice, or would you like to keep discussing me?" Sung-ho, listening from the doorway, felt something settle in his chest that he would later understand was the exact moment he stopped, merely watching her, and started, helplessly, wanting to keep her. It was that same week that Min-jae finally did the thing he had promised himself he'd do 6 days after the alley, and had somehow found 6 more reasons to delay each time. He pulled the closed file. He did not expect what was in it. Case number 5 years and 2 months old. A traffic fatality on a service road outside Incheon, closed within 72 hours, no further inquiry authorized. A payout routed through a shell entity called Hanmayum Mutual, 12 million won authorized. Disbursed to surviving spouse, foreign national, 3,200,000 won actually received. The difference absorbed as processing and administrative costs under a signature Min-jae recognized instantly, because he had watched that exact signature go on to 1,000 documents over 9 years. Sung-ho's. Beneath the authorization, a name Min-jae had heard exactly once before 4 weeks ago, standing in a doorway with a scarf in his hand. Emeka Nwosu, driver, witness, unintentionally, to a shipment he should never have seen. Silenced, the file's language said, in the bloodless euphemism the organization used for everything it did not want written plainly, silenced meaning. Min-jae now understood with a cold drop in his stomach, meaning a man run off a road at 1 a.m. by people acting on an order Sung-ho had signed without ever once asking what silenced would specifically require. Min-jae did not sleep that night. He printed the file at dawn and carried it to the tower himself instead of sending it through any system that might be read by other eyes, and set it on Sung-ho's desk without a word, because some things did not survive being spoken aloud on a first attempt. Sung-ho read it standing up. He read it again, sitting down. He read the surname a third time, out loud, alone, in an office with no photographs on the walls, and understood with the particular arithmetic clarity that had built his entire empire exactly what he had cost the woman currently humming to herself in his kitchen 4 floors below. 12 million won authorized. 3,200,000 received. The difference, 9,800,000 won, skimmed by a man whose name was on the disbursement memo, Oh Byung-chul, senior board member, family friend. A man Sung-ho had trusted with the organization's quiet business for over a decade. 4 years and 2 months of a fatherless child. A woman working 2 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night to make up a gap his own signature had created and his own board had then quietly widened. He did not go down to the kitchen that night. He sat with the file until the sun came up, doing the only kind of arithmetic that had ever truly frightened him, not what a mistake would cost him, but what it had already cost someone else for 4 years while he had not known her name. He told himself he would find the right moment to tell her. He would not find it in time. The right moment, as it turned out, was not his to choose, and the wrong one arrived first, dressed beautifully at his grandmother's dinner table, 11 days before a vote that would decide far more than either of them yet understood. Cha Young-ja's dinners were legend in 3 families' worth of quiet circles, held twice a year in a private dining room with a view of the Han River. And this one had been arranged, Sung-ho understood only once he was seated, as a courtship in everything but name. Yoo Yeon sat across from him in silk the color of unripe plums, poised, polished, the only daughter of a family whose alliance the board had wanted sealed for 3 years running. Amara was there too, at the grandmother's specific and slightly mischievous request. To oversee the meal, I want to see if the food is as good as my grandson claims, Young-ja had said, with the flat delight of an old woman who enjoyed disrupting a room simply to watch what settled where. It was Seo Yeon who noticed Amara refilling water at the edge of the table and smiled the particular smile of a woman who has decided in advance exactly how the evening will make her feel superior. How refreshing, Seo Yeon said to the table generally in Korean, plainly assuming the water carafe in Amara's hand belonged to a woman who understood none of it. The foreign girl. Sung-ho. Does she also do the laundry or only the exotic dishes? The table went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when someone has said something everyone heard and no one yet knows how to answer. Amara set the carafe down without a sound. I do the laundry, she said in Korean so clean it made Seo Yeon's mouth tighten, the accounts, and, apparently, the correcting of assumptions. Would you like your water, or would you like to keep guessing what else I might be good at? Cha Young-ja laughed, a single, delighted bark of a laugh that she did not bother to hide. And Seo Yeon's composure cracked for exactly 1 visible second before she rebuilt it. Badly, I meant no offense, Seo Yeon said. None taken, Amara said, and refilled the glass anyway, steady-handed, dignity intact, and the silence that followed belonged entirely to her. Sung-ho said nothing through the whole exchange, which was its own kind of confession. A man who ran a fifth of Seoul's shadow economy through sheer force of will had just watched a woman he employed absorb an insult meant to humiliate her and had let her handle it alone, because some instinct in him understood she would rather win the room herself than be rescued in front of it. Oh Byung-chul, 3 seats down, used the lull to steer the conversation where he had come to steer it. The board votes in 11 days, he said to Sung-ho directly, in the smooth institutional register he used for everything unpleasant. The U Alliance resolves the territory dispute cleanly. I'd hate for sentiment to complicate a resourcing decision this size. Sentiment, Sung-ho repeated. The optics of the household, Oh said, not quite looking at Amara. A manageable exposure, if handled early. Less manageable, the longer it's allowed to become a habit. Sung-ho's jaw tightened in a way only Min-jae, watching from the wall, recognized as dangerous. He said nothing to O directly, not yet, not with the file's ink barely dry in his own memory, but he found Amara's eyes across the table for 1 unguarded second, and in it she read something she could not yet name. Guilt, wrapped around a warmth that had nowhere honest to land. He walked her to her train that night, the first time he had ever done it, both of them silent through most of the platform's fluorescent hum. 11 days, she said finally. Whatever that vote is about, it sounded like it had your name on it and mine somewhere underneath. It's business, he said, which was not a lie, exactly, only an incomplete one. The kind of incomplete he was coming to specialize in around her. You're a bad liar for a man who runs half the Port Authority's paperwork. He almost told her then. The words were right there. There's a file, Amara. There's a file with my signature and your husband's name, and I have been carrying it for 11 days like a stone in my mouth. And he opened his mouth, and his phone rang instead. A number he didn't recognize, and something in the timing of it, in the flat dread that crossed Minjay's face 3 feet away as he answered his own phone at the exact same moment, told them both that whatever this call was, it was not going to be small. Say it later, she told him, stepping onto the train, unaware how much later would turn out to mean, and unaware that the unknown number lighting up 2 phones on that platform belonged to someone who already knew far more about the file on his desk than either of them wanted anyone outside that office to know. The call was from Seo Yeon. Min-jae took it standing on the platform, his face going carefully blank in the way it only did for genuinely bad news. And by the time he lowered the phone, Amara's train had already pulled away. And Sung-ho was already asking, in a voice gone very quiet, exactly how much of the file Seo Yeon claimed to have. All of it, as it turned out. Photographed off Min-jae's own desk by an assistant loyal to Oh Byung-chul, who had decided, watching the dinner unfold, that a well-timed cruelty was worth more to his territory deal than any loyalty he owed the man whose signature he'd spent 5 years quietly protecting. Seo Yeon did not wait for Sung-ho to tell Amara himself. She found her instead 2 days later outside the dry cleaning shop in Yeoksam on Amara's one remaining day shift, dressed for effect, holding a folder she did not need to open because she had already memorized every line of what was inside it. I thought you should hear it from someone who owes you nothing, Seo Yeon said, instead of from a man who's had 11 days to find the courage and hasn't. Hear what? Your husband. The accident that wasn't quite an accident. The signature on the payout that funded, 3 months of your rent? Before the rest of it disappeared into someone else's pocket. Seo Yeon held the folder out, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. The signature is Cha Sung-ho's. He's known for 11 days. I imagine he was waiting for the right moment. Men like him always are. Amara did not take the folder immediately. She stood very still on the sidewalk, the afternoon traffic loud and indifferent around her, and felt the entire architecture of the last 2 months. The rice, the almost smile, the walk to the train, refold itself into something colder and more precisely shaped, the way a photograph looks different once you learn who took it. She took the folder. She read it standing up, the way he had read it standing up 11 days earlier, though she did not know that, and would not know it for a while yet. And when she was done, she folded it closed with the same careful precision she folded every shirt at that counter. 400 a day, each crease exact. Thank you, she told Seo Yeon, for telling me plainly. That's more than he managed. She did not go back to the apartment that evening. She went home, packed the 2 blouses and the school notebooks and the blue enamel bowl, wrapped in a dish towel so it would not chip further, and told Chi-Chi they were staying somewhere else for a while, in a voice so calm her daughter did not think to be frightened. Sung-ho found out an hour later when the housekeeper called to say the kitchen light had never come on. He went to the small apartment himself, past the guards he'd stationed on the block, without her knowledge, and knocked, and there was no answer, only a folded note under the door, square-cornered, precise, her handwriting steady even now. You let me find out from her. That is the part I cannot forgive tonight. Maybe not ever. Do not come looking for us. I am not your correction to make. He did not slam anything. He stood in the hallway with the note in his hand for a long time, and Min-jae, arriving late and out of breath, found him there, silent, and understood without being told that whatever had broken tonight had broken in the one place Cha Sung-ho had no leverage to fix it. A woman's trust, once withdrawn, on her own terms and no one else's. She did not slam the door. That was the part he could not stop hearing, over and over, for days. The apartment went quiet in a way it had never been quiet before, not even in the 11 years he'd owned it and eaten dinner alone every night without noticing the silence had a texture. Now he noticed. The kitchen's alphabetized spice rack sat untouched. The white bowl she'd fed him from that first Thursday stayed in the cupboard, unused, because using it without her felt like a theft of something that had never belonged to him to begin with. Min-jae watched his employer for 3 days say almost nothing that wasn't strictly operational, and on the 4th day, finally, said the thing 9 years of loyalty had earned him the right to say. You're going to lose the board vote in 7 days if you don't decide what you actually want, sir, and you already lost something worse 3 days ago, and I don't think you've let yourself feel that yet, because feeling it means admitting the board vote was never the real problem. What would you have me do, Min-jae? Undo the signature. No, you can't undo it. But you can stop protecting the man who turned 9,800,000 won of grief into his own retirement fund. And you can stop letting Oh Byung-chul call it a resourcing decision in front of people who lost husbands and fathers to your organization's convenience. Min-jae's voice, usually so measured, had an edge in it now. You said find out who she was. I found out. I've watched you become someone almost decent because of her. Don't let the easiest version of yourself win now, just because the honest one costs more. Sung-ho sat with that for a long moment, the note from her door still folded in his jacket pocket where he'd carried it for 3 days without once taking it out in front of anyone. Call the board, he said finally. Move the vote up. I want it done before she has 1 more day to believe I chose the comfortable silence over her. The board convened on 6 days' notice instead of 11, in a room with a long table and Cha Young-ja seated, unannounced and uninvited by anyone but herself. At its head, because word had already reached her, grandmothers in families like this one always heard first that her grandson was about to do something either magnificent or catastrophic, and she intended to watch either version happen in person. Sung-ho did not open with the merger. He opened with the file. He put it on the table himself, open, every page visible, and read the disbursement line aloud in a voice that did not shake, though several men at that table would later admit privately that they had never heard him sound so exposed. 12 million, one authorized. 3 million 200,000 dispersed. The difference, 9,800,001, routed through Hanmayam Mutual into accounts that traced, cleanly and undeniably, back to Oh Byung-chul. This is a resourcing decision, Song-ho said, looking directly at Oh, the way theft is a redistribution. I signed the authorization for silence 5 years ago without asking what silence would cost a specific man's life. I have spent 11 days learning exactly what it cost his widow. I am done pretending the ledger balances just because no one outside this room can read it. Oh Byung-chul's face went the particular gray of a man calculating, in real time, how much of his empire he had just lost. This is sentiment, he said, echoing his own word from the dinner table, dressed up as it's correction, Sung-ho said. You'll learn the difference. Everyone in this room is about to. He dissolved Hanmayam Mutual within the hour, its accounts frozen, its function exposed to every family it had quietly cheated over a decade, not only Amara, it turned out, but 11 other households, wives and mothers who had received a fraction of what a death should have bought their grief, while a smiling man in good suits called it processing costs at dinner. He canceled the U Alliance outright, in front of the full board, at a stated cost the room did not let him forget. For months afterward, 5,100,000,000 won in broken territorial agreements. Signed away in a single afternoon, a number Oh Byung-chul repeated twice more, disbelieving, as though repetition might make the board reverse it. Cha Young-ja did not intervene once through any of it. She only watched her grandson dismantle, publicly and at real cost to himself, the exact machinery that had made their family powerful, and when the room finally emptied. She stayed behind long enough to say one thing to him, quiet, just for the two of them. Your mother would have liked her, Young-ja said, not for the food, for the fact that she made you say the true thing out loud in a room full of men who've spent their whole lives avoiding it. He went to find Amara that same night, not to fix anything. He understood by now that this was not a thing money or a board vote could fix, but because the not telling her had been the actual wound, and he owed her, at minimum, the true thing said plainly, whatever she chose to do with it after. She was staying with Mrs. Song in a small room 2 subway stops from her old one, and she opened the door with Chi-Chi asleep behind her and the blue enamel bowl visible on the counter, washed and dried and set neatly on a towel the way it always was. I'm not here to ask you back, he said, before she could speak. I dissolved the company that skimmed your settlement. I resigned from the board seat that let it happen under my name. I canceled the alliance my family wanted, and it cost more than I can make you understand standing in a doorway. None of that undoes 11 days of silence. I know that. He held her eyes, steady, the way she had once held a spoon steady over a stranger's wound. I'm not offering you money or protection or anything with my name attached to it as a rescue. You told me once you weren't a correction to make. You were right. I came to say the sentence out loud instead of writing it in a note under a door. Because you deserved that much, whatever you decide to do with it. Amara did not answer right away. She looked at him for a long moment. The coat less expensive than it used to be, she noticed, or maybe just worn differently now, on a man who had spent the last 6 days losing things on purpose, and something in her chest that had been clenched since the sidewalk in Yeoksum loosened, not all the way, but enough to let air back in. I need 3 days, she said, not to forgive you, to decide whether forgiving you is even the right question or whether the right question is something else entirely. He nodded and left and did not call, did not send Min-jae, did not do a single thing to hurry her, because he had finally learned, late, expensively, the way he seemed to learn everything that mattered. That the only offer worth making her was one with no strings woven through it at all. The 3 days gave Amara room to do the thing she did best, which was not forgiving or refusing, but working the problem with her whole clear mind, the way she'd worked every hard math of her life since Emeka died. She had spent 4 years and 2 months cleaning offices at night, which meant she had spent 4 years and 2 months noticing things men in suits assumed cleaners were too tired or too invisible to notice, which drawers stayed locked, which names appeared on which invoices at odd hours, which executive's assistant reprinted the same shipping manifest 3 different ways in 1 week. She had, without ever meaning to build a case against anyone, kept a small notebook. It was Mrs. Song, of all people, who told her what it might be worth, Mrs. Song, who had covered for Amara's late arrivals 100 times without comment, who turned out, when Amara finally asked, to have known far more than she'd ever let on. I saw Director Cha in that alley the same week you did, Mrs. Song admitted. I told the guard not to log it. Some things are not mine to report. She had been quietly protecting the beginning of this whole story before either of them knew it was a story at all. On the 3rd day, Amara went to the tower herself, notebook in hand, and asked Min-jae for a meeting with the board's compliance office instead of with Sung-ho, because she had decided, walking there, that whatever came next between the two of them had to happen after the ledger was fully closed, not instead of it. Her notebook, cross-referenced against the frozen Hanmayam accounts, closed the case within a day. Names, dates, invoice numbers that matched Obyung-cheol's skimming pattern back 6 years further than the board's own investigators had found on their own, evidence her quiet, unglamorous competence had been assembling for years without ever knowing what it would someday be for. It was, everyone in that compliance office agreed, the piece the organization's own auditors had never been positioned to see.